Welcome to a really, really important panel in the Women in Publishing Summit. This discussion, we are digging into mindset. And this is a huge, huge element for so many writers I have found, especially women writers, in the last few years of working with women on various projects related to publishing books. So my name is Alexa Bigwarf. I am your host of this summit, and I am really, really happy to bring you Dawn Coetzer, Cynthia Fales, Lori Baldino, and Pascal Kavanagh. These women are here to talk through the issues of mindset blocks, what may be happening, what you can do to get around them, and anything else that comes up in the conversation. So just to kind of kick off this discussion before I invite everyone to introduce themselves, one of the things that I hear the most, whether it's someone I'm working with or someone in the group or wherever, is this whole idea of they either have mindset, they're like blocked, they cannot write anymore, they're stuck, or they just don't know what to write about, or they are afraid of what they are writing about, or all of these different things that come up. So when people ask, why does mindset play such a huge role in this summit when it really doesn't have anything to do with the production and marketing of a book, it has so much to do with the writing of a book. And if you haven't experienced any blocks or anything, you're very, very lucky, because I know most of us have been there. All right. So I'm not going to ramble on any more about that. I'd like to go ahead and get our guests in on the conversation. So thank you so much. We will start with Dawn.
Hey there, Alexa.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on for this panel. Greetings from a slightly warmer place in Canada. I've run away from the freezing cold 40 days in the wilderness, the Saskatchewan wilderness of minus 30 below weather. And I'm out on the West Coast, which is it's like being in a creative reboot chamber. It's like being immersed into a creative reboot chamber. And actually, it's funny because that's when mindset can often really kick you in the ass, because you have too many options. I don't have enough constraints. And for me, the work that I do is with creative beings, whether they're entrepreneurs. Most of the people I work with are entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurial in the truest sense, which is some of them may be creating small ebooks for their group coaching systems. Some people may be setting up keto bake stands in a tiny market in the middle of nowhere, Saskatchewan. Or some of them may be studying yoga and figuring out how it can apply to their writing while they're spending 2 years on a sabbatical somewhere in India. It runs the gamut. Mindset, you can't leave home without it. So wherever you go, it is there with you. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to pack it? How are you going to unpack it? How are you going to carry it? And how are you going to allow it to lighten your load and brighten the road? So that's what I do from wherever I am, as an inner wilderness guide, as a Martha Beck certified life coach, as a master creativity coach, and as a recovering perfectionist, plus many of the other things I've done in life. That's what I help people do. I help them move through that uncertainty that is so often triggered by how they are choosing to carry their mindset with them on that day.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. Cynthia.
Hi, Alexa. Thank you for having me. Yes. Greetings from Kansas City, where usually about this time of year we would be warming up, but our temperatures are decreasing and we are preparing for 5 inches of snow this weekend. So yay for us. I'll be ready for spring.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So I am, just a little bit of background on me. I have a history of coaching. Everything that I've done in my career has led up to this point, but coaching has been the core concept along the way. So I've done a year of service with AmeriCorps Vista, where I was working with students to help them identify their passion and align them with volunteer opportunities that met with those passions. I've worked with Kauffman Scholars for 7+ years, where I served as their Director of Life Skills Curriculum and Instruction. And we were preparing students for college. So we were hoping to get them to college and then through college. But part of the life skills aspect was helping them to understand the fluidity between growth mindset and fixed mindset and how to navigate back and forth between those two. I also worked at a university here in Kansas City, running a coaching program to help students become acclimated to college life and to take those skill sets that they had that helped them to get through high school and to ramp them up for college. And a big part of what we focused on was, again, that growth mindset versus fixed mindset, but then also helping them understand the results cycle and what that looks like. And I'll touch on that later, but that's just a bit about me. Right now, I am currently the founder and an author and the chief opportunity officer of Launch Crate Publishing, which I founded. And we offer both traditional publishing as well as publishing services. And in publishing services, I have the chance to continue to coach authors through this journey. Yeah, so I'm glad to join you.
We're glad to have you. Thank you so much. I'm sure, so you've got a whole lot of angles you can help people on this from, so that's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, Lori, hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes.
So I'm Dr. Lori Baudino, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a board-certified dance movement therapist. And I actually specialize with children 0 to 18, working with parents as well as educators and medical professionals. And I'm new to the publishing world. I have published my own book and on to my second one. And I'm a big advocate of mindset. So when I'm thinking about where mindset comes in, having the experience of working with children, I recall my own past experiences of being a child, an early writer, and kind of the mantras told as a child about whether you're a writer or not. So thinking about working with children, thinking about childhood and how experiences in writing were impacted just from such a young age, and how that kind of gives us our trajectory of our mindset, and how that plays into writing and active in our own experiences. The other piece that's really valuable to me, I love the growth mindset work, Carol Dweck's work, and also looking at it from a body perspective. So everything I do is looking at the body in terms of how we're moving and create through our entire kind of whole self. And so I look forward to exploring that with you all today.
Oh, that's awesome. I love, okay, so just a side note before we get on to Pascal, and that is that I love the idea of the connection between mind, body, spirit. Like, this is fairly new to me. I was never one of those people that was like a woo-woo type person. But as I start exploring different things that have to do with like affirmations and spiritual stuff and body stuff, like I realize how much it really does all play together. And I know Dawn is big on this stuff, so it's really cool to talk about the movement.
And it's so it's wonderful that you're thinking about how you're coming into it, and just that it's like a kind of a welcoming, saying welcome to your awareness of it, because it's always been there.
Right.
And it is something that's really accessible because it's right in front of us, and we're currently doing it, even just in our posturing as we sit here and talk. So we'll keep talking about it for sure.
Great. Thank you. All right. Welcome, Pascal. Last but not least, tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Pascal, and I see myself as this cobbled together being that has a mind of a scientist, the heart of a writer, and the soul of a seeker. And all of those influences touch everything I do, right? I haven't been able to segregate very well, but after a very long career as a chemical engineer in the biotech industry, I actually made a hard left turn on my life and embarked on a spiritual quest that ended up leaving me in a position as a teacher. And so I've been a spiritual teacher, a creativity coach, and an author for quite some time. I have 6 novels and counting.
Yay.
And I don't know, dozens, hundreds maybe of nonfiction and fiction articles, essays, that kind of thing. That is my medium, right? Words are my palette. And what I love to explore is how to untangle these like knots that we create within ourselves when we are endeavoring to be, do, or create something that is outside of norm or outside of comfort, which by definition is what every artist, creative writer is trying to do, right? To make great art, we're pushing our own buttons, basically. We're bringing up our own stuff, examining it, cleaning it, massaging it, loving it, and I find that it's very easy to get caught beneath it, through it, in it, right? Like we're in this big spider web and we can't get out of our own way. And so my work with artists and creatives in general as a coach and counselor really is this process of like cleaning it out so that we're free to let our inherent creativity out without working ourselves into a tizzy, right? Gray-haired tizzy, right? It's like we're none of that. So I'm really excited to talk about this. I love people having the freedom to express, right? And put things into the world that add to beauty and kindness and compassion and awareness and knowing. And so, I just want everybody to find that place within themselves, even if their palette is the kitchen table or their love relationship or, the way they dance by themselves when nobody's looking, right? Whatever your creative expression is, I'd love to assist in the freedom of that.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So it's kind of cool being amongst creatives of very different backgrounds. Like all of us are in different elements of expression. I love the idea of being able to take a step back and look at the non-writing part, like what else is happening, what else is going on, what else can be a part of it. For many people, particularly I think with fiction writers, with nonfiction, I don't see it quite as much because they usually have content to draw from because it's their area of expertise, right? But with fiction writers, you hear people talk about these horrific mindset blocks and just writing blocks and not being able to move forward at all. And I shared an example. It was just really good timing. I was scrolling through Facebook earlier and saw someone post in one of my writers groups, like this woman was in pain because she cannot write. She cannot get past whatever block it is that's holding her back from finding her creativity and being able to write. For someone, speaking specifically on the like paralysis mode, what can we dig into this, and what are some tips and suggestions that you might have on breaking free of that?
So I'll jump in then, I guess. Paralysis. Okay. There's a paralysis from a deficit of ideas, and there's a paralysis from an abundance of ideas. There's a paralysis from a deficit of guidance. There's a paralysis from an abundance of guidance. So it's kind of, I think it's important to, first of all, to jump in with where Lori is, feel into your body. Your body doesn't lie. And what does this paralysis feel like? Not how does it feel? That's a head game. What does it feel like? Get into your gut, and it's okay to do this by yourself. You do not have to share this with another human on the face of the earth, just with yourself. And if it feels like something you cannot say in public, fine. Say it to yourself and be there with yourself. We worry so much about being with other people, we forget about being with ourselves. The only person in the world that we ever have to be honest with is ourselves. And why does that not apply to creativity? I work with people who are deep into self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is not procrastination. It is not even paralysis. It is something totally different, and it goes deep. It is a separate groove from all of these other things. And what I have learned, the very best tool, tip, suggestion that I can give anyone I'm working with. It's 3 words and an air check. And it is this. Okay. Paralysis, I see you. Fear, I see you. Anger, I see you. I use an air check that works for me. Some people like to touch their tongue to the tip of the roof of their mouth, the tip of their tongue to the roof of their mouth. Some people like to snap their fingers. I don't care what you do. I like this because it's action. And it reminds me that the only way to the other side of something is not the only way. The surest way to the other side of something is through it. Mm-hmm. So paralysis, I see you. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do about you, but at least I see you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a tremendous benefit to acknowledging what you're currently in, no matter how bad it is, just acknowledging that.
Yeah, speak it. Speak it and be there with yourself.
Absolutely.
Not being in it. That's not what it is. It's being there with and for yourself in it. Mm-hmm. It's scary, but it's doable.
Up.
Yeah, I think, to add to that, once you acknowledge it, then you're almost left with, well, what now? What's next? And I think there's a couple of things that you could do, right? The first thing that I usually recommend for people who are stuck in something is to do something different. Mm-hmm. And even if it's writing, don't focus on whatever piece you're stuck in. Find a writing prompt and just write from your heart. No matter how bad you think it is, just write. And there's something about doing it in spite of that will help to get you unstuck. And then in my intro, I talked about the results cycle. And that is that our thoughts drive our actions, and that our actions will determine our results. And then those results will reinforce that original thought, right? And so helping people understand that if I can shift my thoughts and I can start to alter my mindset, then I can have a direct impact on what I do next, which impacts my results, which will then reinforce that original thought that I have. So there's a difference between me saying, I can't write and I can't write yet, or I can't finish the story versus I can't finish the story yet. Yet as that there's possibility on the end of it. And then it changes what I do next.
Well, that's great. Mm-hmm. I love that. I want to add in, if I can, just quickly here. We were having another panel discussion, and it had nothing to do with mindset, but we went down the road of talking about writer's blocks. And Caroline Topperman, one of our panelists, had this suggestion. She also said, getting away, just like Cynthia just said, getting away, doing something different. And she liked to do this photo project where she would go and she would take pictures of things, and then she would come back and she would just write about what was in the photos. And she's like, it's really easy because anybody can describe what they see in a picture.
Right.
There's a brown house with a black dog sitting in front of it. Anybody can write that, so
right.
And the idea of sitting down and just writing something to get you out of that I'm stuck, I can't write anything yet. Or maybe you change that. I love that too. Change it to, I can't write about this now or yet, but I'm going to write about this little house on the farm that I see in this picture and get moving. So I love that. I can't write yet. That's really great. Pascal.
I just want to say there's so much wisdom in this gathering. I love it. So I love this question. And gosh, a long time ago, when I was deep in my quest, and I also happened to be a new mother, I heard this piece of information that there are numerous cultures in which the terrible twos does not exist. They've never heard about it. It's not a thing. this tiny little thing shifted the entirety of my parenting life.
Huh.
And influences everything that how I perceive the human mind and how I work with all my clients. So the question that I ask that they love, hate always is, if you did not believe that writer's block existed, what story would you write about what you are experiencing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Because it would be a very different story, right? We sort of fall into this crutch. There's no plumber's block.
Right.
There's no, right? It's this way that we have chosen to protect the tender flesh of our creative baby.
Yeah.
Which is legitimately fragile. Like I give it that. And yet I think it's important to find a way to coddle it without denying it, without paralyzing it. And so, what I do when when I encounter this situation with a client or a friend or a colleague, is to imagine that we can sort of blanket that tender place from which our creativity stems, give it a little bit of separation, right? A lot of this blockage is because we've layered onto it, well, it has to be good, or I'm never going to find a publisher, or I don't have 3 hours to write. I only have 7 minutes, so there's no way that will even work. Like we just layer on so much stuff, and I ask that you just clear it off. Just say, I'm going to put black marks on a white screen or a white sheet, and that is the extent of it, right? There's no other obligation needed. When it's time to revise, to publish, to market, to sell, whatever, we're going to deal with those later. We're not going to let them mar and tar and bruise this wonderful, exquisitely soft and fragile thing that is the birth of creativity. Yeah.
Yeah, we put such unrealistically high expectations on ourselves, on this tender spot. And really, I love the question that you ask. I love the idea about there's no such thing as the terrible twos. Byron Katie has a similar question. She suggests that people just ask themselves, who would I be without this thought? How would I be without this thought? And the answers, you'd be surprised at the answers that bubble up so freely and lovingly, to riff on what you're saying, Pascal, so lovingly from this spot where our creativity is hanging out in its own little blanket fort, and just enjoying the light, enjoying the time, enjoying the warmth. It's such a good one.
One of my most interesting experiences, and I'll close with this, is I was presenting at a conference, and one of my signature talks is called Juggling Too Many Balls, because I write steamy romances and I like the pun. And how do you not go legitimately clinically insane trying to be an indie publisher, right? Mm-hmm. Indie writer and publisher. There are literally too many things to do.
Yes.
And so in the middle, this gentleman who was, probably my age, right? Established, he says, he asked me a question that included 3 parts about self-editing, drop caps, and Facebook ads. And I was like, honey, you got that. That is like highway, easy pass lane. I don't know if it's like a fast lane to crazy. You can't hold all those things together, right? Write your baby. When you need to know about drop caps, Google it. When you need to know about Facebook ads, I got 7 great books you can read and 9 great people who can teach you, right? It's like crazy. Anyway.
It's so true. And I promise we're not going to skip you, Lori, on this question.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay.
A couple of things that came to mind to me when we were talking is that, one, you're right. People, I think paralysis also comes from just trying to take on too much at one time. You know, if you just step away from thinking about all those other things. But it also reminds me of, like, I write a lot on health topics and clinical studies and the placebo effect, how you can have people who are healed from their disease just as effectively or even more, and they were in the placebo group as the people on the actual medication. So, like, how incredible what's inside this big head is, you know, what it can do, what it can, what when we set our minds to it. And I, for one, like, I am so angry at myself for all the stupid stories I've been letting people tell me to tell myself for years. And I love this idea of, who would I be if I got to decide who I was?
I think it's important that this is neuroscience, right? This is about our brain. It's important I have to start from a science place, because it's important for us to know that it actually means our brain's working correctly. Mm-hmm. That when there's a flood of emotions, when that unknown pops up, that unconscious stuff that's kind of been built and simmering in us for so long comes up, we move to the downstairs part of our brain and we are in fight, flight, or freeze. And that's the response is, I can't move, or I need to fight through this. And that just means that our brain's working correctly. The truth of it, though, is that nothing's eating us. You know, we're not being attacked. We're not in a cave back in the time, right? We're not a gazelle about to be eaten. So once that's there, then what you're talking about of, like, looking at just describing the picture or taking that breath, what we know of how to get from that downstairs brain to that upstairs brain is to really be in our bodies. So we start with breathing and we start with moving. And I know, though, that oftentimes now mindset and mindfulness becomes like this big catch-all, and everyone thinks they have to sit still to be mindful. And we need to move. And so when you tap into where is that happening in your body, like, what's that feeling sense that I'm getting from this stuck feeling? Where is it? I like to add some descriptives to it. So some sensations. So what's the texture like? What's the temperature in that spot? What's the color? What's the shape? Is it moving? So is that lump in my stomach feel solid, or is it pounding and it's a beat? If you could challenge yourself, I heard before we were saying about, like, you know, could you yourself, or you could do this with somebody. How would that look like to move it? So getting up and moving. And ultimately what you're talking about, though, or what we're all talking about, is being in the here and now. If we're thinking about what's happening in the future, of, like, what if I can't finish this writing, or in the past told me I wasn't a good writer, or I was doing it wrong, then we're in that anxiety place. But in the here and now, you're safe. You're in your space, you're in your room, you're writing, you've got your pen. So you kind of stick with what we do know. And I love that the body is something we really do know. You know where your body starts and stops. You can just take a look at it. You can look down. So even if you just did some tracking in your mind of, like, here's my feet, here's my ankles, and kind of trace up the whole body, that's something known. And playful, because some ways we get out of stuckness is by being playful and being silly, is thinking about some opposites. So if you feel like you're going slow, maybe speed up the process, maybe move around faster. If you feel like you're sitting, then stand up, see how tall you can get. So playing with opposites, as simple as that, can really get us into our bodies and really get us into a place of, like, what is going on. And I know I could talk for hours about the mental part, but I'll leave it at that for now. The kind of the script that we tell ourselves, the negative, and how important the positive psychology is. Yeah. But I'll leave it at that.
I don't think that's a bad place to continue on with the conversation, actually. Yeah. I think that a lot of us get stuck in these repeating scripts, especially when it comes to our writing and our ability to move on. So I don't mind continuing on with the conversation. We can.
Well, I was just thinking, and I heard it from this group as well, is just the, like, I am is the known. So if we're saying, like, I am a person, I am able to use my fingers to write, or I'm typing. So what is those I am statements? Mm-hmm. There is incredible research about how thinking about what is the truth, the consciousness, what we bring to our knowing, really helps us stay in the success of it, stay in the positivity of it. So, you know, when we think about mindset, we're thinking about that effort is all about describing what is. We're not saying like the all or nothing thinking of like good and bad. We're just saying you are writing, you know, or you are sitting. And it seems to me it's so tangible, something that we get stuck up here, and all of a sudden all those the simplicity is gone. Children, as I mentioned, I work with, are really wonderful at staying present in their bodies. They get often told to not stay. But, you know, it's like kind of finding that child in ourselves.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. Anyone else have any thoughts on this topic?
Well, I was just going to pop in here and add to what Lori spoke about. With Martha Beck training, we use the body compass, but often they suggest that you rate it, both positive and negative. I ditched the negative aspect a long time ago. I thought nobody needs to be reminded about how crappy they feel. We know how crappy we feel. And so, but to check your body out. I love what you said, Lori, about look at your body, see where your arms end. Like, you can see where your fingers end. You don't always have to feel it. You can validate more of your senses. And I do that often with myself and other people by asking questions. Because the questions, my philosophy about questions is that our brain seeks equilibrium, and a question requires an answer. And until you have that answer, your brain is sort of like hot wired, you know, dancing like a cat in a hot tin roof. So questions are really good for doing something different, for taking action, for getting to a different thought or the possibility of different thought. And I'm going to use this now with my fingers. If I looked at, what would I see if I looked at the edge of my hand if I were a giraffe? You know, it's like, I don't even know what that means. Good. I don't know what that means. I'm on my way.
I hear what you're saying, and that even the questions, I would kind of add to it that you're talking about being curious and wonderment. And that curiosity and wonderment comes that like moment where you get that gleam in your eye and you want more. And so if a question is posed in an opening way, like the receptivity of it, then it's beautiful. Versus the question being like a judgment of like a right or wrong answer.
Right.
So I see that playfulness in what you're saying of like being wondering, I'm curious about this. And our body has a natural way of equilibrium. So even if we were to get out of our minds and realize I feel stuck, naturally our body's going to move. It's not going to stay still forever. We know that from physics. So you know, that we don't have to worry so much, but we get these fear responses of like, oh, what if, you know, right. But actually the truth of it is everything will resolve itself.
One of the questions that I most often use is to turn the statement, isn't this curious, into, isn't this curious? Sometimes people have to fake the feeling of the question until they get it. But then eventually, you're right, curiosity is such a gift. It's such a healing gift.
Sure.
Well, and there's so much power in finding the answer yourself. And that'll continue to drive you forward in a more positive direction as well.
Towards those results.
Absolutely.
And changing the way you approach it right from the very get-go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
I'd love to add one more thing, if that's possible too. So although it can feel that, or we can feel that I can't write is what's happening, but that's never true, because the inner voice is always going. Right? We're always creating word sentences, entire epic movies, right? It's like, and so a tiny little shift to realizing that it's not that I can't write, it's that I can't write what I think I'm supposed to be writing at this moment, right? We just complete that thought to make it more reality-based. And so maybe let go of that expectation. Maybe write what is actually happening inside of your head. Release the story, or, you know, whatever this, you're supposed to be writing this scene and completing it, or this whatever article. Write what's in your head, right? Just begin the process of transcribing what is arising for you, because also those thoughts of story are also arising for you. So it just kind of greases the runway, right? You just, even if it makes no sense, even if they're nonsensical, made up words, which I love, right? I just start making up words. And then eventually, right, the gear kicks in, and wherever I want it to go finds me. Yeah.
Well, and there's something about like just having something on paper, writing in general, just having something already written there to come back to and build off of is so much easier than a blank screen too. So even if you're just starting with a little chunk and it's not the best writing, you know, having something there that you can come back to maybe tomorrow after you've had a little bit of a chance to walk away and process and all that kind of stuff, it's always easier for me to come back and build out something I've already started than it is to start on a blank screen and go with it. So I want to shift gears just a little bit for our last kind of question, and that is talking about, I think one of the things on a mindset thing that also happens to us, especially now because of the rise of social media in our lives, is the comparison game and imposter syndrome. I mean, I see so many people who I'm like, I see them posting about they just won this award, or they, you know, sold this many copies, or those, and the natural thing is to say, why is it working for them and not for me? You know, what am I doing wrong? All these kinds of things. Like we can really quickly get into our heads on that, or why did that person get endorsed by this person, or, you know, what's going on. So I'm curious, and we don't have to go in any particular order, just if anyone has anything to add to this topic, like, do you have any suggestions on when those things start to encroach upon us, how we can back up and get back in our own area of comfort, I suppose?
Yeah.
I have to say, this just happened to me before I got on with you all. I got an announcement from a colleague about a new book, and just all the support for their book, all the sorry, I'm forgetting the word, but the comments that people wrote, the endorsements. Yeah. And I was actually thinking about how, to me, a part of that gives me the drive I have, where I say yes to things. I think about yes to opportunities, yes to believing in that all is possible. So it kind of gives me a little bit of a drive, that those comparisons that come up. But then what I wanted to make relevant is that coming to meet all of you today. So I find that so much about connection, relating to other people and finding communities, that some of that fear in me goes away, where I think, oh, wow, well, here I am meeting completely people that I've never met before in all different ways. How when we join together and we collaborate, I'm a big believer in collaboration, rather than thinking about I'm doing this for myself, or I want to be the best only one, like all by myself. When you're thinking of social media, of just that, hopefully the idea is social, is that we're supposed to be collaborating, connecting together, and helping one another. So I immediately think about, how can we all help one another? You know, what are we going to do to like learn from one another and say, hey, I have an opportunity. What about this? And so I really want to out there of that, the social learning theory of like how the stress decreases when we all work together.
So true.
That's a great point. You know, I work with a lot of lone wolves, what I call lone wolves, people who prefer to do things by themselves and then find other people at very specific parts of the journey to collaborate with. But generally, they're walking alone a lot of the time. And I'm one of those people. And I know this comparison thing. It had bit me in the butt for a long, long time with one person in particular. And finally, which was interesting, it's like, oh, okay, what's going on here? But finally, the way that I moved out of that was to just say, okay, what's really going on here? Come on, Donnie, you can be honest. Let's talk to yourself. And then I would ask myself this question, and I now suggest everyone else does this. What do I love about this? What do I love about this? Come on, cut the crap. What do you love about this? And the answer, you go through the soft answer and then you drill deeper and deeper. And eventually, what I loved about this was the fact that this person was out there doing it. That's what I loved. It's like, oh, light bulb. Okay, so that's what I want here. I want to be, it's not the results so much as the actions that she was consistently committing to that I really loved the most. And since then, comparison has become nothing but a signpost for me. A solar light, SOULR, that helps me pretty much every day or whenever it rears its ugly head. Loving head, pardon me. I stand corrected.
You know what I like what you're doing here, because you're giving us actual examples of how you self-correct in the moment. I'm shifting my mindset on this. I'm changing. It's not an ugly head anymore. I had the same kind of moment actually in this last couple weeks of promoting the summit. I was thinking and doing all the things. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. It's so hard. And I was thinking, no, stop. The universe sends back what you're putting out to it. So I self-corrected and put in there, this is amazing. I'm talking to all these women who give me chills every time we have these conversations. I mean, we're crying in some of the panels together, all these women that are coming together in this beautiful way to talk about how we can help each other. I'm like, why would I want to put out there that this is hard? Why would we want it to be ugly? It's beautiful. So I love that great example of how you can start to self-correct right in the moment and teach yourself a new way of thinking of things. So it's wonderful, Dawn. I just adore you, by the way. I adore all of you, but Dawn and I have a long history. So.
Yeah, we've been on some roller coasters together.
Yeah. Cynthia and Pascal, would either of you like to weigh in on this?
I belong to several writers groups, and one of which has a lot of heavy hitters, and they frequently will post about six-figure months.
Mm-hmm. Months. Not just years, months.
Six-figure months. These are, big time. And consistently, the newbies who've just arrived or will freak the hell out, right? There will be mass hysteria about this. And it's always, right? It's almost like monthly, I go through this process of okay, now we're breathing, right? And these, to see somebody further along the path than you, or even somebody who's obtained one aspect of something that you are working toward, provides the ability to put another rung in your own ladder, right? Mm-hmm. It's like if you have chosen your destination, you can start to build the path to going there by seeing what others have done and either choosing to do or not to do, right? Some are paths of caution. So there's that. And the other thing is that we never see the whole story. So I always suggest that people don't get so caught up in the end result, because we don't know if that person who just made $106,000 actually spent $80,000 on ads,
right,
or on lawyers because their marriage fell apart,
right,
or on medical help because their body's falling apart. It's not that I'm wishing ill on the successful. No. It's just that you just don't know. And so it's not worth it for you to envy, because maybe what you needed to do to get to that is not something you're willing to pay.
Right. Yeah.
So find your own destination with your own rungs, right, and do that, right? Yeah.
And, I think just adding on to that, if there's an opportunity to tap into those lessons learned from those who are experiencing those six-figure months, that's mind-boggling to me. But if you can start to understand their journey, there might be some nuggets that you can apply to your own journey. So, take it for what it is. And if they're willing to help understand how they got there, then great. And if not, ask someone else who might be on a similar track. But I always like to look at other success so that I can, similar to what Lori said, find inspiration in what they're doing. And then I have a podcast that I run with the publishing company where we talk about everyone's journeys and understanding that, again, what you see on the end is not what it was like along the way. So
Right.
I just love what you said about the nuggets along the journey. Again, it's like you get to mine. When we witness other people's journeys, we get to mine for those golden nuggets. And and that's for us. And yeah, that was great. That was great too.
I think one of the things on the comparison game that I've really had to check myself with is that similar to what Pascal just said, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but also like you don't have the same, you're not equipped for the same things as everybody else going. If I'm comparing myself to a 23-year-old guy that had a 7-figure launch, who has no children, who has no marriage, who has no, it's not possible. I have 3 little kids and a husband. I guarantee you I could pull off a 7-figure launch. I would not have children or a husband left at the end of it, because we're just not equipped. So I think you have to take that part in there too. But this has been such a delightful conversation. And I hope that if nothing else, when you listen to this, you take away a feeling of camaraderie and knowing that you're not alone in these moments of panic and fear and blocks and all those kinds of things, but also to know there's a lot of different ways to approach it. There's a lot of ways to get, all of these ladies have different approaches, but the one thing is that you have to make change, whether that's how you're approaching yourself or approaching your situation. So before we completely wrap up, I would like everybody the opportunity to make their closing statement, if you will, on any last tips or thoughts, advice, and definitely where to find you.
Okay. Well, you can find me at Dawn Kotzer. That's it. Apparently there's only one of me. I have no idea how I lucked out, but I guess I'm living proof that there's only one you. Everybody, all others, okay. And I work with people on a very customized level. Everything I do is bespoke. I don't have specific programs. I don't have pathways that I don't have a roller coaster. I dismantled that a long time ago, or maybe I just put on my parachute and jumped off. I don't know. But I do whatever people show up with when they seek me out, they lead, I follow. And I draw from, Pascal, you mentioned segregation. I don't even try to segregate everything. I've had 5 different careers. Every one of them has been successful through a lot of roller coaster hell. So all of that comes with me. All of that shows up with me. And I'm very, very pleased to do chats and complimentary calls. I'm not in this for the money. I like the money. I like being paid. But that's not why I'm here. That is not my core driver. So Alexa, thank you for inviting me and allowing me to say that. And it's been wonderful meeting people that I never knew before this moment existed on the planet Earth. But I know you make planet Earth better.
Oh, well, we're so happy to have you. You are a bright light. Thank you, Dawn. Cynthia.
If you're interested in finding out more about me individually, you can visit my website, clfails.com. If you're interested in finding out more about the publishing company, you can visit launchcrate.com, LAUNCHCRATE.com. And there's information on there about what I do, about how we do it, about how we help you move forward through the writing process, whatever that looks like for you. And just one closing tip that I would give people is to remember that results cycle and that your thoughts drive your action. So if you can focus on shifting those thoughts, everything else will follow.
Yeah, that is so true. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Pascal?
My spiritual counseling and resilience coaching lives at boldsoulcoaching.com. My writerly life, including a specialized program that applies my counseling to authors and other creatives, can be found at pekavanaugh.com, which is also the name under which I write all my fiction. And I love you and I support you, and I can't wait to receive whatever wonderfulness you all bring into the world. You know, we need it. There's so many of us who are, you know, we're craving that. So don't let the dark and heavy stuff squish your light. And thank you, Alexa, for putting this together. It's amazing.
Thank you. All right, Lori.
Thank you also for having me, and meeting you all has been so wonderful. My information is my name, so Dr. Lori, Lori, Baudino is BAUDINO.com. That's my website, as well as my contact information is therapy@drloribaudino.com. And we're talking to women in publishing, so any of you parents, care providers out there, my area of specialty is working with family and children, and in terms of having, I have a subscription program where you're able to have access through email and video to learn more and get individualized. And my closing tip is to just really pay attention and be in your body, to, you know, drop out of that head and into that body. And as you mentioned before, Alexa, that spirit. Because the answers are right there with us. And if we take away those labels and we just think about, I am sitting, dance is more than just, you know, ballet and tap. It's breathing, it's our partnership, it's our communication. And so I hope you all will keep moving through your journeys of writing.
Thank you so much.
You're
This
welcome.
has really been incredible. I love these panels. I love everything that you all brought and the different energies and suggestions. And thank you for being part of our community and part of this process.
Thank you.
Thank you.